The recall, we took action as a whole of government approach, right, with FDA, USDA, as I just laid out. And the president understands, again, he understands how difficult this is. He understands how challenging this is, and we have acknowledged that. He understands that this is the job of the president to be able to multitask, to get things done, especially when it comes to making sure that your child gets healthy food. And so that is what we've been doing.
When was someone called here at the White House to say this could be an issue that requires presidential involvement?
So I don't have the timeline on that. All I can tell you, as a whole of government approach, we have been working on this since the recall in February.
The independent regulatory agency, the FDA, the one that questions have been referred to in the past, is now being embraced as whole of government. Let's point that out here. The other thing, why wasn't Abbott invited today?
Oh, well, because Abbott, as we know, they agreed on a path to safely reopen the Sturgis facility after safety concerns that FDA called them out on. So, look, we understand Abbott is working hard to get back to safely making infant formula. That process is ongoing and should remain between them, and we are encouraged by the progress they've made. Today is about progress and action we can take to ramp up right now. But I want to, I need to say this, and I want to lay this out. Look, this meeting was focused on ramping up production and availability of safe infant formula to American families. That is what matters. We have to remember what FDA did was to make sure that families were getting food that was safe for their kids. That is important, and that's what matters. That's why we showed the chart to show where we are today compared to a year ago. So increasing production here at home and importing high quality formula from abroad. We are working with many manufacturers. The companies joining today represent a subset of companies working with the administration to increase on supply, whether it be through the DPA, which is something that we know that the president called on, Operation Fly Formula, and FDA's importance guidance. And so the actions are making a difference. And so I just want to make sure that we see what this administration has done, this whole of government approach.
Doing this now on June 1. If he knew about this,
we have been doing this a whole of government approach since the recall.
Yeah,
that is what, and it's not.
But it's invoked until last month.
Because we had to make sure. We had to make sure and really look into what would work and what was the best direction to move forward. That's what we have talked about. We have talked to you all every day that we can about each step that we're taking, whether it's the Defense Production Act or whether it's the Operation Fly Formula. So every step of the way, we've explained why we've taken these steps. We've explained what the process has been to take on these certain items. And so this is what we've been doing, and we have been working on this 24/7, and we have seen an increase of production. The president met with manufacturers today. He met with manufacturers 2 weeks ago, and so we have been working very hard to make sure that American families out there who have children are getting what they need, whether it's a mom, a dad, whether it's a caregiver, are getting safe and healthy products, food to their children.
Just to put a finer point on that, is it my understanding that what you're saying is that even if the president had known sooner, before April, that your response would have been exactly the same?
I'm not saying when the president knew or didn't know. He spoke, I know he spoke to that himself, so I'm going to let that stand. I am saying that we have been working on this. We, as a whole of government approach, has been working on this since the recall, which was in February. That is what I'm saying. I'm talking about internally, not just the agencies, not just FDA, USDA, but also internally. We have been working on this for months, and we have taken this incredibly seriously and have been in this briefing room, and the president has spoke to this on his own about the different steps that we have taken. And we've also laid out a timeline for you all so that you know what the steps that we have done.
It sounds like you're saying, though, even if the president had known sooner, would that have made a difference?
No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that we have been working on this since we found out about the recall since day one. That is what I'm laying out to all of you as a timeline. That is what it's important here to know, that as a whole of government approach, we have taken this on since the first day that we learned about the recall.
Okay, on another topic here, can you explain to us a little bit more the president's role in these ongoing negotiations over gun reform legislation? Because yesterday you said the president would get involved when helpful. A short while ago he told us that he has been involved. So can you just sort of explain, how does he view his role as these talks are ongoing?
A couple of things. He has been involved. He has been involved since day one of his administration, since calling on Congress to take action. Just this past 2 weeks, he went to Buffalo to grieve with the family, to make sure that he listened and they had a conversation with the family, right? Because it was so important to him to do that, to console them, to hear from them. He went to Texas on Sunday to do the same. He's spoken about this from his first joint address to Congress. That was last year. He spoke about this in the Rose Garden when he talked about his comprehensive gun reform, the executive actions that he was going to do. He talked about this at the State of the Union. So this is something that the president has been doing since day one. And not only that, he worked on this in the Senate. He knows how to get this done, and he's done it before. As a senator, he helped pass our ban on assault weapons and high-capacity magazines, as well as enact the legislation that made the federal gun background check we use today. So this is something that he has been doing for a long time, and he understands what we were talking about yesterday. He understands how these negotiations work. Sometimes you have to give it a little space, so it has that quiet, so that congressional members, senators can work on the issue. But he has been involved from I would say, from day one, since he walked into this administration.
But on these negotiations on any possible legislation now, is he involved right now, or is he giving them that space?
He's giving them space to do the work, to have that conversation. But since the shootings, since Buffalo, our teams here, the Office of Leg Affairs, has had more than a dozen calls with the negotiators and senators and congressional members on the Hill. They have been having active conversation and working with them, or talking to them about what actions and steps need to be taken and where they are with the process. Go ahead.
Just very quickly on Abbott. They've said that they can get the Sturgis plant restarted by Saturday. The FDA has said other things. What is your assessment of the credibility of that claim from Abbott?
When did they say this?
This week.
This week, okay. I don't have it, we're going to, like I said, we've been working very closely with Abbott, not we, but the FDA has been working very closely with Abbott to get Sturgis facility up and running. So that is something that they've been, in touch with FDA about. I cannot speak to their timeline. That's for Abbott to speak to. Clearly, this is something that we want to get done as soon as possible, but it also has to be done in a safe way.
Okay, and then on the president's New York Times op-ed about Ukraine, he said that the policy here is to see a democratic, independent, sovereign, and prosperous Ukraine. But he did not say within its internationally recognized borders. And so we're wondering if that was a deliberate omission intended to signal that Zelensky, that Ukraine is going to have to give up some territory in its negotiations with Russia.
I wouldn't read into that in that way, but the president just put out a statement that I do want to iterate just 2 lines from it. The people of Ukraine continue to inspire the world with their courage and resolve as they fight bravely to defend their country and their democracy against Russian aggression. The United States will stand with our Ukrainian partners and continue to provide Ukraine with weapons and equipment to defend itself. The new package will arm them with new capabilities and advanced weaponry, including HIMARS, with battlefield munition to defend their territory and Russian advances. We continue to lead the world in providing historic assistance to support Ukraine's fight for freedom, and that is going to continue to be our focus.
But is your assessment that they're going to have to give up territory as part of these negotiations?
That's not something that I'm going to talk about this from the podium from here.
And then just one last thing, the Bolsonaro meeting that's happening at the Summit of the Americas, do you guys have a date on that, and are you going to raise concerns with Bolsonaro about his questioning?
I don't have anything to preview at this time on the Summit of Americas for you. Go ahead.
Corinne, just to follow up on the baby formula meeting.
Sure.
So if the president is saying the baby formula manufacturers knew that things would be really bad as soon as the Abbott recalls happened, the shutdown of the plant happened, but he did not. I guess, can you help us understand why they knew but he didn't? Who failed to inform him? Why didn't he know if they knew?
So, again, what I will tell you is that we have been working on this issue from day one since the recall. You know, what you hear from the president is his frustration with the issue itself, with American families having to deal with and what they're going through because this concentrated market and the problems of the Sturgis facility. We have to remember how we got here. We got here because FDA learned that Sturgis facility was not operating in a safe way. And so FDA wanted to make sure that families were getting healthy food to their babies. So this is a responsibility that FDA has and that FDA did. From our part, we did everything that we can from the moment that we learned about the recall to work 24/7 to make sure that the production went up.
I guess that just doesn't address the question of why it was that the president didn't know when the manufacturers are saying that they knew. As soon as the recalls happened, as soon as the plant was shut down, that this would be a very serious problem. Was there a breakdown in the process here? Did somebody fail to inform him?
Look, I have not spoken to the president. I know that he just said that a few moments ago, so I would have to talk to him about the April date. But what I can tell you is what he has seen, and this I know for certain, is that seeing the empty shelves is unacceptable. Seeing what families are going through is unacceptable. This is why we have been working 24/7 to make sure that we are using every lever at our disposal to deliver for the American people. That is what I know for sure that I can share with you at this moment, and that's how we're going to, going to continue to move to make sure that we're doing everything that we can and beyond.
Yeah. Could you help us understand then, you've said that the administration has been working 24/7 around the clock since February to try to address this issue. The president says he didn't understand how bad the issue was until April. So is it that you were working around the clock since February to address this serious problem, but the president didn't know? Just want to be clear about that.
So the actions across the government began day one, and of the recall, as I've said. The White House has been in close, regular contact with agencies responsible for addressing these issues since then. While these actions made serious progress, including by ensuring there was more infant formula coming off factory lines than before, the recall, it's clear there is more work to be done and more levers to be pulled, which is why you've seen higher profile actions this month, and we're going to continue to do everything that we can. So to your question, the White House has been working across government to make sure since day one of the recall to do everything that we can.
So then perhaps the president wasn't aware of the work that was going on around the clock since February to address the issue?
I mean, the president has multiple issues, crises at the moment. When he walked into the administration, he talked about the multiple crises that we needed to deal with as a country, and so that's number one to remember. But the most important thing is that as a White House, working with the interagencies, we have been working on this since day one, since the recall. Yeah.
Okay.
And this is his White House.
I actually had a follow-up to a question that we asked in here over 2 weeks ago, very much related to what we've been talking about. We had asked if there were specific actions that the administration took, including meetings, phone calls, briefings, either in February or earlier, to begin addressing the shortage. You had said at the time you didn't have any specifics then, but you'd be happy to go back and get that information and be fully transparent.
Yeah,
it doesn't sound like you have that.
No, I don't have that information. But again, I can say to you, since the recall in February, we have been working around the clock on this issue. It is an important issue. We understand how frustrating it is for parents, and so this is something that the White House across the agencies have made a priority.
So do you plan on getting us that
yeah, for sure. I mean, feel free to reach out to me directly. You have my email, you have my number. Feel free to reach out to me, and we will do everything that we can.
Can I just do one follow-up on
Well,
a
I mean,
topic?
MJ, I got to move on. Yeah, go ahead.
So I think the question here is we all understand that government operates at many levels. The president's not read in on every issue. Why this one seems to stand out is that these executives talked about it as a crisis. The president talks about it as one of the most personal crises that he has experienced. And you're now sort of saying that the White House was operating on this without the president being aware of or directing those actions. And so there will be future crises. And so I think we're all trying to understand the information flow and the decision making when there is a crisis that rises to the White House's involvement, and is the president involved in that? And so the question really is, it sounds like you're questioning the April date that the president just gave us.
No, I am not questioning the president at all. I'm just saying I have not spoken to the president. I know he just mentioned that date.
But you're saying White House officials were involved in and engaged on this issue prior to the president being briefed on it himself.
Right, which is not an unusual thing, as you know, Kellyo. This is a very common way of operation, way of moving. Nothing unusual about this. You're asking me to confirm something, and I was in my office. I did not actually hear what the president said. I do not like to speak on something without having a conversation with the president first. And so that's number one. Number two, what I'm trying to say is that his team on very high levels who run his policy offices, who runs his department, have been working on this since day one. And that is...
He can act without the president's direct involvement and make decisions before he's even briefed on a subject that's become one of the biggest issues for American families today.
I mean, it's not uncommon. It's not an uncommon thing to do, to offer assistance, to offer help, to offer guidance to an agency when they need it. That is not an uncommon thing to do. Yeah.
So just to follow up on the rest of the front row, who decided after 6 or 8 weeks?
You said that, and hopefully the back row hears.
Who is the person in the West Wing
Yeah.
who decided after 6 or 8 weeks that this baby formula shortage was finally something that somebody should tell the president about?
Look, again, I have to go back and talk to the president. I did not hear him take questions or answer any questions to all of you. And so I want to do my due diligence, right, as his spokesperson, to make sure that I have a conversation. What I can tell you is what we have been doing as an administration since the day one of a recall. And just let me just say this, because I want to make sure, since we have folks watching, that the actions that we took actually made a difference here. DPA is allowing manufacturers to reliably plan for scaling production. In the case of Abbott and their suppliers, an increase of 25%, they can be manufacturing at 100% capacity. Likewise, Rickett plans to expand production by 40%. Operation Fly Formula has cut 3 to 4 week timelines for Nestle product to move the Europe to 72-hour periods. Through FDA's enforcement discretion, we will get 27.5 million bottles from Bubs Australia. So these are all important actions, including the graphs that I just showed, how high production is higher than it was a year ago. So this is also important. We want to make sure that the American people, the American families know that we have been working on this 24/7. The president has done everything that he is able to do, or has been able to do, and will continue to do more work, because we understand there's more work to be done.
Okay, another big topic. When are you guys going to admit that you were wrong about inflation?
No easy questions today, huh?
The Treasury Secretary says that she was wrong, so why doesn't anybody here at the White House?
Okay, so look, what the Secretary was pointing out, this is talking about yesterday when she was doing her hit with her TV hit with CNN, is that there have been shocks to the economy that have exacerbated inflationary pressures which couldn't have been foreseen 18 months ago, including. Well, I'm trying to answer your question. Hold on. I was just getting to the why not. including Russia's decision to invade Ukraine, multiple successive variants of COVID, and lockdowns in China. As she also noted during that interview, there has been historic growth and record job creation, and our goal is now to transition to steady and stable growth as inflation is brought down, as Brian Deese said yesterday to all of you when he was standing behind this podium. So the President's economic plan, as we see it, is working. Just today we learned that the manufacturing was up in May, building on the 545,000 manufacturing jobs have been created since he took office, further proof that companies are investing in America. We are on a path to stable growth, and we are addressing supply chain problems. Our plan to tackle inflation, lower costs, reduces the deficit, and respects the FDA's independence. It's the best way for us to achieve sustainable and durable economic growth. So that's how we're doing, the work that we're doing every day to make sure that we attack lower costs, higher costs.
Just that I understand, the Treasury Secretary says that she was wrong, but the White House was not wrong about inflation.
Here's the thing: we have achieved a. First of all, I explained to you what she was trying to say, so I just laid that out. So those are your words, not my words. I just laid out what she was trying to say and tried to explain in fullness her part in her answer. We have achieved a historic recovery through an extraordinarily unprecedented economic moment. The President has consistently noted that the primary drivers of inflation are the pandemic and Putin's invasion of Ukraine. The twists and turns of both these monumental events have affected energy prices and also food prices that we have seen these past several months. This is Putin's price hike, which the President refers to, and that is what Secretary Yellen was referring to if you read the entire transcript, and that's what I'm trying to say to you. Hopefully that lands. Go ahead.
Thanks, Karine. You say Legislative Affairs has had more than a dozen calls with lawmakers on guns recently. Which ones?
Oh, I don't have a list, and we are always, we are always very clear about not sharing not saying who we talk to and keeping conversations private. We're just trying to give you a number so you see our efforts and what we've been trying to do. But I don't have a list. I won't list our list to you right this time.
I just asked because often the White House press office hasn't given any level of specificity as a policy about.
Well, I did say we're talking to negotiators, so I think that could give you a sense of who we're talking to.
Sure. And then a couple questions briefly on baby formula. Would the President support the FDA continuing to allow more foreign imports of baby formula permanently, more than just a temporary solution, given that we're seeing that this can become a crisis very quickly, given that we have just a few manufacturers who have a corner on the market?
Well, we understand that we need to look at this further and figure out what needs to be done so that this doesn't happen again. I don't have anything new to share on if this is going to be a long-term way of moving forward with baby formula. I don't have a policy update on that, but I know to tell you now, as I've been saying, we are doing everything that we can possibly to make sure that the American families are getting their children healthy and safe formula.
And then just real quick follow-up. We talked, when the President spoke earlier, came up in one of the questions that was asked, just the timeline of the FDA's response when it came to investigating this Abbott facility. There are questions about what communications there were between the FDA and the White House. I mean, is the President satisfied with the FDA's response in this crisis?
Yes, he's satisfied, but last week, during their oversight committee, he talked, Califf said that there needs to be he called for an after action report. He appointed Woodcock to doing that after action report. He wants to get down to the bottom of what happened, and so that is important. I don't know if you're asking me, does he still have confidence in the FDA? He does, and the FDA themselves are going to try and figure out what exactly happened and how do we avoid what happened these past several months with Abbott and their facility shutting down. And so that is an important thing as well.
Thanks, Karine. On this baby formula issue, you said that the whole government approach began in February right afterwards. And I think a root of this sort of questions or folks are having is that it, in fact, doesn't seem like this extended beyond the FDA until certainly the president found out in April, but especially when this became really an acute issue in May when the Defense Department was brought in, the Agriculture Department was brought in. So can you, other than the FDA, who was part of this whole of government response, especially in this kind of crucial February to April timeline where the president wasn't aware of what was going on?
Right. I mean, I mentioned the FDA. I mentioned the USDA. I've mentioned, policy departments here within the White House.
During
the USDA issued detailed guidance to states. This is when the recall happened on February 17th. The next day, on February 18th, USDA issued detailed guidance to states on how to seek waivers in their WIC programs, which we learned was a very important element, which was a red tape. Well, which was a red tape, as we've learned, that needed to be cut. And we know directly from companies that this is one of the most important areas for action to be taken from the government, and we're building on that work with the announcement that we made as it's related to a USDA urging states to cut all of WIC red tape. So that was that role in that particular component.
Were there any efforts outside the FDA about encouraging either the import or production of additional formula? It would seem like, from an outsider, that if a plant goes down, you know that it's going to be a crisis, that you would immediately start looking for other sources of supply.
I mean, I can't speak to specifically what the FDA was doing at that moment. All I can speak to is what happened at the recall. When it comes to production, I can talk to what we have done these last several months, meeting with manufacturers. Again, the graphs that I showed showed how the production has even increased from last year. I think 8 million more in one of the graphs that I showed. And so we're going to continue the work. We know that there's more work to be done, and we're going to make sure that we get to the other side of this.
One other on a different topic. About a month ago, the Supreme Court decision or draft decision leaked on abortion rights. A lot of folks, including the president at that time, talked about how that really reframed the debate and the stakes for the midterm elections. But since then, the president hasn't publicly met with any abortion rights groups. He hasn't spoken about it in weeks, given a speech on it. I know that you've and the vice president have kind of occasionally mentioned it from the podium, but there's been no sort of presidential action on it. So I'm wondering, does that signal that the president's understanding of the politics of this issue have changed in any way, or is there an event with the president that is going to happen before the Summer of the Americas or before he travels to Europe? I mean, it just seems to have fallen completely off his schedule.
Well, I mean, I don't have anything to preview on his schedule, but the president is clear on this. He believes the right to peaceful. He believes the right that a woman has the right to make their own decisions when it comes to their own health care and their own health and their own reproductive rights. I mean, that's something that he has said. That is something that he believes. Our teams here are in constant communication and having regular meetings with groups out there who are focused on making sure that continues, the rights of women to choose continues. But I don't have anything to lay out.
The president just hasn't made this. I mean, he kind of laid the stakes out as this should be something.
Well, I mean, if we step back for a second, it was a draft. It was a SCOTUS draft. We spoke to it. We were very forceful about it. The president put out a statement. You've heard from the vice president. You've heard from other members of our team. So it's not like we didn't take this seriously, and we don't continue to take this seriously. So this is an important issue for the president. We know that. We know that for the American people. I just don't have anything to share with you on his schedule. Okay.
Thanks, Green. On Ukraine, the U.S. has been really clear that it would not engage Russia directly because it did not want to escalate the conflict. But General Paul Nakasone, and I apologize if I mispronounced that, but who heads the U.S. Cyber Command, he reportedly told Sky News that the United States is engaged in offensive cyber activity against Russia. Can you talk about that? Why disclose that? That seems contrary to what the administration's position.
Look, as it relates to the Kremlin, to President Putin, we don't negotiate our security assistance packages to Ukraine with the Kremlin. They have not been pleased by the amount of security assistance we've been providing to the Ukrainians since far before this most recent phase of conflict began. But we are doing what exactly the president said he would do, which is, and he told President Putin directly, we would do what we would do if he attacked Ukraine back in December, which is provide security assistance to the Ukrainians that is above and beyond what we were already providing to help Ukrainians defend their country. So that's exactly what we've done and will continue to do. Remember, and we say this all the time, this is Russia that chose to launch a brutal war, that chose to attack Ukraine's sovereignty and its territorial integrity. And so this is Russia's war. And so they started this conflict, and they could choose to end it at any time, and they have not. But we continue to maintain that deconfliction channels with the Russians for when necessary.
But just speaking specifically about the offensive cyber action being taken from the United States against Russia, is that not contrary to what the president has said in the past about not wanting to engage directly?
No, it's not. We don't see it as such.
Can you talk about why offensive cyber activity against Russia is not?
We just don't see it as such. We have talked about this before. We've had our cyber experts here at the podium lay out what our plan is that has not changed. So the answer is just simply no. Go ahead, Tyler.
Just following up on an inflation question. I understand you walked through what Secretary Yellen was talking about, but she still said that she was wrong then about the path inflation would take. President Biden made similar statements saying that inflation would be temporary. Brian Deese was here yesterday. I asked him the same question. Does anyone in the White House have regrets about how they talked about inflation, given that it has turned out to do exactly what they said it would not do?
I mean, look, I laid out from if you look at the whole transcript, what it is that Secretary Yellen was trying to lay out when she was asked that question. She was pointing out that there have been shocks in the economy that have, again, exacerbated inflationary pressures, which could not have been foreseen 18 months ago. I mean, that is just a reality that we're working with.
And what all of his top aides said turned out not to be true and turned out not to happen. So I'm wondering if there's any sense within the White House that was a mistake to say so, given that it turned out to occur very differently.
Again, there were certain shocks to the economy that exacerbated the inflation pressures, right? So that includes Russia's decision to invade Ukraine, multiple successive variants of COVID, as I've mentioned already, and the lockdowns in China. The president has consistently noted that the primary drivers of inflation are the pandemic and Putin's invasion of Ukraine. The twists and turns, again, as I've talked about, have been monumental events. And so, as the Secretary Yellen has also noted, there has been historic growth and record economic creation, and our goal is to do the transition, which is what Brian Deese was talking about, to make sure that it is steady and stable growth as inflation is brought down. So that there are things that have occurred that has been unprecedented in this past year or two, actually 3 years, and that's what we're speaking to.
I hear you on that, but that still doesn't necessarily answer the question about whether inside the White House there is a feeling that there should be a concession like Janet Yellen made yesterday on TV, that the way that the administration talked about inflation was not best suited to describe to the American people the economic pain that they would eventually be feeling as we continue to see prices rise.
I mean, look, the president is working, has said this over and over again. We have said this. We understand what the American people are going through. We understand the high cost that they're dealing with. We understand what inflation is doing to gas and to food prices. We have taken multiple actions, which the president explains himself in his own voice in the Wall Street Journal just a day ago. And so that has been our focus as well. And we're coming out of a very strong economic period, and so now we're going into a transition. There are things, as it relates to inflation, there are things that were not predictable 18 months ago, that were not predictable from day one. So as we were speaking to them as we saw it at the time, and so that is also important to note. I mean, I know you're asking me that the question of, did we speak about it wrong, or did we, say, did we, I don't know, misspeak or not have it right at the time. I mean, this is what I'm trying to lay out, is that there are things that happened, the COVID variants, Russia's war in Ukraine, that was not predicted at the time. And so what we're trying to do, what the president is trying to do, is do everything that he can to make sure that we deal and attack and fight inflation. So that is our focus at the time.
Just one last thought on this. I understand that you guys did not. I understand that you did not predict that, but there were many economists, Larry Summers, among others, who were very clear in warning about the risks of
Okay, so if we have learned anything the past 2 years, it's that our globalized economy is tied to the world around us, right? That's the number one. Again, the variants of COVID, lockdowns and slowdowns in foreign countries due to the pandemic, Putin's unprovoked invasion, Ukraine, each of these events impact prices here at home and abroad. It impacts the cost of food here at home, the supply of food abroad, the cost of gas here at home, and supply of oil around the world. Inflation is also a global issue. Inflation in Europe increased a record 8.1% in May compared to last year. So that is how we're looking at this, and this is also a global challenge. Okay, go ahead.
Corinne, just two questions. First on baby formula. All of my colleagues' questions have basically gotten to the same point, which is people want to know who in this building knew what when in the lead up to the formula shortage. You've said that that folks internally were on this since day one. You said that senior leadership in the administration was on it, but you also said that you don't have that time frame.
No, I said they were asking me specifically about the president, and I just don't have that time frame to share. What I can say is the White House began working on this from the first day of the recall, from day one of the recall, which was back in February.
Are you able to provide or commit to providing a timeline of who knew what when?
I mean, that's the same question that MJ just asked me, and I answered that question to her. I have laid down what has happened since the recall, which was on February 17th. I've laid that down. I talked about on February 18th with the USDA. I talked about WIC programs. I've laid down what happened, not reminding folks what happened with Abbott in the factory, why we got here. And I've also talked about what the FDA has said that they're going to do, and they talked about that last week, which is look into this, make sure that we get to a place that we get to the bottom of what happened, do an after action report. When that after action report, we will have a lot more, and that will come directly from them and what they did and what they see could be done better. So that's the thing that's really important. There will be an after action report. We will be able to see exactly what happened from their standpoint. Again, we have been working on this since the first day of the recall on February 17th. That is our involvement here with the White House and FDA and what we've been trying to do.
And then just lastly, on the Summit of the Americas, obviously this administration has been preparing for this for months. We've had many conversations about invitations to heads of state for months. We are now less than a week out of this, and there are still several significant, outstanding potential invitations. How did that happen that we've gotten so close to the 11th hour, and you still haven't decided whether to invite anyone from Venezuela, including the opposition leader who you recognize as the president?
I think if you've been following this administration for the past year and a half, 1 week is not the 11th hour when it comes to how things move, and so that is a lifetime away for us as a White House. I think any White House would say that. And so, look, we still have some final considerations, and as soon as we have the final list, August, we will share that. Look, you know, we're gathering people together to focus on our collective responsibility to forge a more inclusive and prosperous future for the hemisphere. And that's something also to note. I know there's always questions about the invite, there's always question about who is coming and who's not, but we also should talk about and focus on what the purpose of this meeting is, and that's also critical and important. But I have to tell you, a week away, that's a lifetime. That's a lifetime, and I think any administration would share that. Hold on, I'm going to try and go to the back. Go ahead.
Thanks, Corinne. Yesterday, there were leaders from Airlines for America and the U.S. Travel Association here at the White House for a meeting with staff, and they urged the administration to end the pre-departure COVID testing requirement for vaccinated travelers who are coming to the U.S. from overseas.
What is that? Sorry. Was that BTS?
That was not my phone.
Okay, that's what she says, folks.
Is the administration considering ending that requirement for COVID testing for international travel?
So we're constantly evaluating our policy. The pre-departure testing requirement remains in place as we have it today, and any decision on pre-departure testing requirement would be made by our health and medical experts.
Is there a sense of how long that could and should remain in place at this point, and what purpose it's serving right now if people in the United States can travel freely without any sort of testing?
I mean, I don't, it's in constant evaluation as I just laid out. I don't have anything more to share from here. Oh my gosh, I'm trying to see who to go to. Go ahead, I don't think I've called on you in a while.
Yep, thanks, Corinne. Question for you about this report out of California on reparations. I was wondering if the president has seen it and if he would use it to guide any sort of executive action, since I think the last thing he did on reparations was say that he supported the study that Congress is potentially wanting to
So
pass.
his stance on reparations and supporting the study hasn't changed. I have not seen the California report, but his personal, his stance, policy stance has not changed on reparation.
And also one more quick one. Deb Haaland has tested positive for COVID.
Oh, okay.
Do you know when the president and first lady, they were last tested, because they were with her on Monday, and would they be considered to be close contacts?
Well, I do not know when she last saw the president or the first lady, Secretary Deb Haaland.
They were together on Memorial Day.
Oh, were they? Okay.
There are pictures of them.
Okay, great. Well, thank you for that reminder. I know that, and we've said this multiple times, the president has a regular weekly cadence on testing that has been, approved and talked with his doctor. I don't have when the last time he was tested.
And you weren't aware about her
No,
test?
no. This is I'm just learning about this now. Okay. I'm trying to see. Who else. Yeah. Okay, you sir, way in the back. Yep.
Thank you, Corinne. Just one question. A few weeks ago, the State Department said that the U.S. did not look favorably on the construction of the East Med oil pipeline from Israel to Cyprus to Greece and then presumably to Europe. Has any of this changed as so many European countries try to wean themselves off Russian oil?
I don't have any more to share on that. I would have to check with our policy folks at NSC. I do not know if that position has changed from what you've heard from the White House, but I would just have to check with the NSC to make sure. I'm so sorry, from the State Department? Yeah. Okay, yeah, I would refer you to the State Department and check in with them on that piece.
And not the NSC?
Well, because you said it was the State Department. I think I misheard, but I think you said that it was the State Department had put out that announcement. Okay.
Any question from the back?
Oh my goodness.
Any question from the back? Any questions?
Go ahead.
Yeah, sure.
If you have a question.
I do, but your fingers waving around.
I know. I'm trying to pick people I haven't called on in a while, so it's wholesome. So people are getting a question.
I think everyone's grateful for that. I'll ask just one question.
No.
Something the president mentioned when we were in there now. You talk about inflation, the wheat supplies or the food supplies, and he talked specifically about, I guess he was referring to Ukrainian, the inability to export Ukrainian wheat, and that something had to be done about that. Well, what the Ukrainian foreign minister has been talking this week about, supposedly they're in talks with other countries about navies going in to the Black Sea and creating a corridor to get that weed out. Is this something that is being discussed on any level in the White House?
That is something that I would actually have to go check on as well. That is not, I just don't have an update on that as far as the weed. That's clearly something that we've been monitoring. And we have said Russia's aggression on Ukraine has certainly raised prices, as we have talked about, on gases and food. Wheat, I believe, is about a good percentage of in Ukraine, a good percentage of the kind of the global market, and so we have seen prices go up. I don't have any update on that. I would have to check with this time. I would have to check with NSC.
Can I ask you a question from the back?
Yes, ma'am. Go ahead. Go ahead, Phil.
Thank you. I have a question about the President's Wall Street Journal op-ed, but I wanted to ask a more general question first. And my more general question, which is, I think, at the heart of a lot of things that you've been asked, is how serious does an issue have to be before it's brought to the President's attention?
So let me just lay this out, because I think this is really important. And I've said this multiple times. The reason that we are where we are with Abbott in this facility, with the baby formula in this current situation, and we have seen production go up, again, the graphs that I showed, and that has happened because of our involvement in what we were able to do. Look, the market, there are four manufacturing companies, just four. And that is something that we also have to address down the line. And this is something, as we talk about competition, the President has been very focused on. But FDA, as we've said, called out a safety hazard, a safety issue with Abbott, and they had to shut down one of their facilities. When that happens, they do all the things that happens when a safety issue comes up, and Abbott had to shut down that facility. So that's the thing. That's why we got to where we got to. From the moment that we heard of the recall in February, on February 17th, as I've laid out, we took action. We took action and we moved forward, and we did everything that we can. And I've laid out cut the red tapes, and now the DPA, the Defense Production Act, and other things that the flying in formula from across the board. All of those things from abroad. All of those things were actions that we took to make sure that we dealt with this crisis. But the government, the White House, has been involved since we first learned about the recall, and so that is important to know. The President deals with multiple crises. His administration deals with multiple crises. When we walked in a little bit over than a year ago, we talked about the economy. We talked about COVID. We talked about climate change. All of the things that the President attacked and dealt with, and his White House dealt with on all at once. And we have seen his comprehensive plan when it comes to COVID and what we've been able to do and getting people vaccinated and boosted. We see where the economy is currently. Now we're in this transition. All of those things are important to note, that there are always multiple crises happening that we are dealing with all at once.
And then on the Wall Street Journal op-ed, in that essay, the President reiterated that he supports the independence of the Federal Reserve. He called on Congress to pass tax credits, and he also called again for changes to the tax code to bring in more revenue to drive down deficits. Correct me if I'm wrong, but these proposals aren't exactly new. I mean, we're coming up on a 40-year high of inflation. Does he have anything else?
Yeah, I'm happy to lay that out as how he's fighting inflation. Look, as you just said. Yeah, well, I mean, let me just tell you what we have been doing and what we will continue to do and what we know is important in order to fight inflation. So you mentioned it, giving the Fed the independence it needs to take the steps to bring inflation down, pushing Congress to lower costs on things families rely on, like prescription drugs, which you've heard us talk about, that eat up too much of Americans' budgets, taking steps to stabilize the energy markets, for example, coordinating a historic release increase from strategic petroleum reserves here in the United States and from countries around the world. All of these things matter, and lowering the deficit. This is a place where we have made notable progress, as we've talked about, more than $1.5 trillion in reduction in the deficit this year alone, and we want to keep making that progress, so that's not going to end there. And there's other ways too, the lowering cost of high-speed internet for 50 million families, building more than 1 million new affordable homes to help bring housing and rent prices down, helping America's farmers increase crop yields to help bring down food prices, and fixing our supply chains to reduce the cost of moving goods to shelves and to families and homes. And we're always looking at other things that we can do. But these are actually action items that we have taken that are not small, that shows the work that this president has done to really attack inflation. We understand that there's more work to be done. We understand what families are feeling right now, but we are doing the work to try and address this.
Ryan, can I ask something that the administration launched today, please?
Let me see who else. Go ahead.
Thank you. So today, the VP announced the launch of the Global Water Security Action Plan, which seems important because it essentially says that now the U.S. foreign policy will consider global water security as one of its core issues, right? So I guess I wanted some explanation from you as to why this was. Will this be another element of the VP's portfolio, or is she just launching it? I mean, how are you guys dividing this up?
I mean, look, the First Lady, the First Lady, my goodness, the Vice President has clearly her own portfolio and things that she wants to attack that helps families, that helps make sure that we're delivering for the American people, and so she has multiple things that she does. Clearly, that is something that's going to be critical to foreign policy, critical to how it tracks back here to the American public. I can't speak to what her portfolio looks like and what things that she'll be focusing on. There's an array of issues to focus on. I would reach out to her office directly.
Can I have a follow-up on China? China has called for the United Nations Human Rights Commissioner to investigate mass shootings and gun violence in the U.S. So can we get a reaction from you? So this is, again, China requesting the UN Human Rights Commissioner to investigate mass shootings and gun violence in the U.S. Can we get a reaction? And specifically, does the president consider gun violence as, protection from gun violence as a part of human rights and the right to live?
Well, he definitely has said that it is a epidemic. He called it a public health epidemic. So he has taken this issue very seriously. He has laid out a comprehensive gun reform plan through executive actions. He has the most executive actions than any president at this time in this administration. He's calling for Congress to act and to continue the work that needs to be done on the legislative, on the federal side, whether it is expanding background checks, red flag laws, as we're hearing Congress talking about right now, making sure that we are keeping our children safe. We're keeping, churches and places where people go to like grocery stores or any public facility or even your home safe. And it is really important to this president. He's made this a priority since he was a senator and a vice president and now as a president. So this is something that he's taken. I'm not responding to that. Okay. We're done. Thank you so much, guys. See you tomorrow.
Thank you. Can you take questions from my first?
I did. I took Fred's question. But I took Phil. I took your question. I took your question from your colleague right here.
You don't respond to email.
I have not gotten an email from you.
I've sent you emails that you don't.
Well, maybe you have my wrong email.
And I'm wondering why.